Squirm.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all this evening. Didn't expect a turn, but I'm very grateful. And I'd like to thank the Nanaimo North Library for allowing me to use their venue. And I'd like to thank my videographer and sound man and cinematographer and nuclear physicist Murray Wilkie for being here tonight. And I would be very remiss if I didn't thank my lovely assistant, who's hiding somewhere. So now I can tell you why I can't call her my lovely assistant. I have to call her my lovely wife because I got picked for that earlier. And as Lyndon Johnson says, you only need two things to make your wife happy. You need to let her know that she's likely to get what she wants, and then you need to give it to her. So, exactly 2 years ago, Robin and I were in Ketchum, Idaho. Well, why, you might ask, and you should ask, because otherwise I don't have a story to tell you. The answer is we were going to Christina Lake. And your mind's working on the geography, and you're wondering how I need to be in Ketchum, Idaho to get to Christina Lake. And we weren't lost, and we weren't just overly exuberant. There's a story that went back 29 years earlier. So, for our honeymoon, we went to Islas Mujeres in Mexico, and we met a couple, lovely folks, Richard and Carolyn, who were Mounties. I'm not sure that's the politically correct term. They were with the force, I'm not sure that's correct either, with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And we became very good friends, and for the last 29 years, they've been inviting us incessantly to come to Christina Lake, in the middle of the BC Rockies. And so, Labor Day weekend, 2 years ago, 2013, we decided we would go to Christina Lake. But we were not just going to go to Christina Lake, because I told Robin that I wasn't going to go all that way and not have something else to come back to on the way back to make it even more worthwhile. And she said to me, well, why don't we go to Montana for the long weekend? So from that, there's two things you should glean. The first is that she's from New Zealand, and she doesn't say Montana. And the second thing is that she's from New Zealand, and her sense of North American distances are challenged. I remember being in my hometown, which is Kenora, Ontario, and she saw a sign to Toronto, and she wanted to go that very minute, and it wasn't going to happen. So I said to her, we are not going to go to Montana for a long weekend, because going to Montana is just about like recreating the original American westward migration. And so I got an idea, and I thought, well, as long as we were going that far, we would go see the Wild West. And I got online, as you do these days, because you have to, and I looked up what was between Nanaimo and Christina Lake in Montana, and I came up with this. So every Labor Day weekend in Ketchum, Idaho, they have a celebration called Wagon Days. Now, before you get the wrong idea, they did not steal the name of their celebration from the book. But I did look it up, and I thought, well, this is phenomenal, because those wagons are actually real. Those are Lewis ore wagons, and they were ore haulers built in 1889. Biggest, toughest, most impressive vehicles ever crossed the Old West. The steel rim wheels were 7 feet tall, 4 inches wide, and they supported a ship of wood and leather and metal and canvas, 16 feet long and 14 feet high. They had a 250 cubic foot interior. They could carry 9 tons of cargo. And even empty, they weighed 6,400 pounds, which is as much as a heavy-duty pickup truck with 4 times the payload. The brake blocks are 3 feet long. And so the mules that drag these wagons were required to pull their own weight, which is where our expression, pull your own weight, comes from, is from these ore wagons. Not only did they bring them out during the Big Hitch Wagon Day celebration, they moved them with mules down the main street of Ketchum. And they creaked and they groaned, and it was magnificent. So that's the first thing I wanted to see on the way back. The second thing I wanted to see on the way back was this guy. Because Ernest Hemingway has been a great inspiration, great writer, and he actually lived, or wrote rather, the way the Old West was lived. He lived authentically in nature, and he faced, or he wrote like he faced death with dignity and courage. He did neither of those things. But when he committed suicide in Ketchum, it's my theory that the Old West, the metaphysics of the Old West, the zeitgeist died with him. So I had two good reasons to go through Ketchum, and I needed to pepper the dots between Christina Lake and Montana, and back to Nanaimo. What was against us was, and I don't know if you remember this, but in 2013 there was the Beaver Creek Fire, which just about destroyed most of central Idaho. They had evacuated Haley, which is just down the road from Ketchum. The Wagon Days parade was canceled for the moment, and they had issued almost issued an evacuation order for Ketchum itself and Sun Valley. So we were heading into a fire zone for our vacation. Now, some people have said that this is just a vacation book, but I point you in the direction of other vacation books which actually have some literary merit. There is an Atlas Obscura, and there's the website at the bottom, which shows where everybody went. So in my aspiration to be included, that's where we went. So we went from Nanaimo to Christina Lake, and then down through Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, back through Idaho and Washington State. And there are 15 little wagons there, and there are 15 chapters. So one thing I'll draw your attention to is the fact that each chapter is elemental. There are elements that somehow interdigitated with the theme of each chapter. Some of them are obvious. Silver City being silver, of course, Nanaimo being gold. Some of them are not so obvious, so you have to read the book. And if I got 15 chapters, and I've only got a few minutes to talk about them, I have to make some decisions, because according to the manual of author's readings, one is ill-disposed to talk or to read for more than 12 minutes. So no excerpts for more than 12 minutes. Which, if you know me, and most of you do, is a very, very difficult thing to accomplish. However, I will try. So the 3 chapters I've chosen for you to read excerpts from are from The Most Beautiful Town in America, and the Mercury there is because I needed a dentist, like Doc Holliday, which I got. One from Buffalo, Wyoming, Eating Crow. And the last one, of course, I have to give you an excerpt from Wagon Days itself, which was when we hit Ketchum. So just for the book reviewers out there, now's your time to leave. This is actually kind of important to me because there was, in the mid-1800s, the Queen's superintendent of schools, named Matthew Arnold, who delineated what the 3 standards are for your appreciation of a book. So I should be able to do the following 3 things. You know, if you ask yourself, what's the writer trying to do? I think these people want to. How well does he succeed in doing it? And the third criteria for a masterpiece is, does the work exhibit high seriousness? So I just pause there for a minute, because tonight you are not going to get high seriousness. When I write books, I write them on 3 levels. There's a lower lyrical level. That's what I'm going to give you because it's 6:30 on a Thursday night and you're in a crowded room. There's a middle level, which is the scientific and historical underpinning, the factual underpinning that I love to get involved with because I'm an internist. And the top layer is the metaphysical, existential, sort of higher order stuff. Now, in addition to those 3 factors, we'll get off this topic in a minute, there's a guy named William S. Burroughs, who was described by Norman Mailer as the most, or the biggest literary genius of the time. Now, Truman Capote thought Norman Mailer was wrong about William S. Burroughs. And I think that Truman Capote was right about Norman Mailer being wrong about William S. Burroughs. Because William S. Burroughs, if you know anything about him, was a heroin addict. He played William Tell with his wife in Mexico with a shot glass full of tequila, and she lost. And he was attracted to and made advances to Allen Ginsberg, which right away, in my mind, detracts from any genius this guy could have had. However, I have an admission, and that is I am being pulled from Ernie Hemingway to William S. Burroughs in my advancing degeneracy.